of trafficking indicators and mental health problems. A series of urgent High Court injunctions seeking to block some of the deportations continued almost up until the flight took off at 1 a.m. this morning. The estimate cost of a long-haul home office charter operation is thought to be about £300,000. With 7 people on board, that figure equates to about £43,000 for each deportee. I guess it was important enough to spend that kind of money to deport these Jamaicans back to their homeland. All right, as you've heard earlier this morning, we're going to take a look at the situation and get an update on what is happening with respect to the BICO CLICO situation. We could all remember that those 2 entities collapsed back in 2009. British American Insurance Limited and Colonial Life Insurance Company Limited formed a group called the BICO, and we are going to look at the status of the legal actions on behalf of the policy holders this morning. To help me with that update will be Dr. Kenny Anthony, and many of us know Dr. Kenny Anthony. He was a former Prime Minister of St. Lucia from 1997 to 2006, and from 2011 to 2016, also opposition leader as well. A former lecturer at the University of the West Indies, former department head of the Caribbean Justice Improvement Project. He is this morning here to talk to us via telephone, and in his capacity as one of the attorneys involved in the litigation on behalf of former BICO CLICO customers. So, I understand I have him on the line, so I will go straight to Dr. Kenny Anthony and say good morning to him. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. Good morning to you and, of course, all your listeners in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's really a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Great. Glad to have you. First of all, let's begin with the basics. The legal basis for this claim that has been filed. Talk to us about that legal basis.
All right. Basically, the proposed action is being brought under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas established in the Caribbean community. The jurisdiction for the interpretation of the provisions of the treaty falls squarely within the Caribbean Court of Justice. As you know, all countries in the Eastern Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, subscribe to this jurisdiction of the CCJ. Essentially, the action is this, that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, when the collapse of CLICO occurred, moved to protect nationals of Trinidad and Tobago and ensure that they were compensated for the policies held by BICO and, of course, by CLICO, because CLICO actually owned BICO and operated BICO from Port of Spain in Trinidad. The government of Trinidad and Tobago insisted that they could only reach out to policyholders in Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore refused to come to the rescue of policyholders in the Eastern Caribbean, including, of course, St. Kitts, Grenada, Dominica, etc., St. Lucia, and so on. The government of Trinidad and Tobago had, in fact, agreed at a CARICOM meeting to compensate the islands up to $100 million US, but they never did so. They only paid out about $36 million and refused to pay the balance. The result was that a lot of BICO policyholders got about just 14 cents to the dollar. But there were a lot of policyholders who bought a special type of policy called the EFPA policy. And those policies attracted significant investment by persons across the region. In some cases, these policies were issued by BICO. In other cases, out of holdings in Barbados and through a subsidiary in Anguilla. Basically, what the case is saying is this, that the government of Trinidad and Tobago acted unlawfully when it moved to protect its own citizens and did not offer the identical treatment to policyholders in the Eastern Caribbean and elsewhere. And secondly, under the Treaty of Chaguaramas, detailing the rules that govern trade and business in the region, the people in the Eastern Caribbean were entitled to what we call cross-border services, meaning that all the services that were available to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago should also be available to citizens of the Eastern Caribbean. So in effect, the government of Trinidad and Tobago discriminated in favor of their citizens at the expense of the citizens of the Eastern Caribbean who held these policies. And furthermore, they created a special regime of law to protect their citizens, and in so doing, they acted in a discriminatory manner contrary to the Treaty of Chaguaramas.
Okay. You mentioned that you are taking this matter to the CCJ.
Yes.
I just want to ask you, though, because a lot of our CARICOM citizens don't have a lot of faith, according to polls and so on, in CCJ. Why should they feel that they would get some justice out of the CCJ?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I personally don't share the views of a lot of people regarding the Caribbean Court of Justice. I mean, I saw that the court has issued some far-reaching judgments and in some ways very surprising judgments, and that they have acquitted themselves very, very well. I mean, as someone who was involved in the establishment of the court, I'm very, very happy and pleased by what I see coming out of the CCJ. That's the first thing.
Okay.
But there are very important reasons why we had to opt. BACOL had to opt for the Caribbean Court of Justice, and simply put, they're these. First, in protecting the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago actually passed legislation to disallow legal action by citizens of the Eastern Caribbean or citizens outside of Trinidad and Tobago against CLICO in Trinidad.
Okay.
They actually debarred those actions. Now, if, of course, you were a policyholder, let us say, in St. Kitts Nevis, and you wanted to take on a Trinidad government, the first thing is that you would have to get around that legislation. And I can assure you that would take years to litigate, especially if it has to wind its way to the Privy Council. And in any event, even if you got a decision saying, yes, you can sue in Trinidad and Tobago, you then have to start all over with your claims. So I'm pretty certain that you will be in the courts for the next 10, 12 years, which means that a lot of the policyholders who may not be around to see the ultimate conclusion of any such action. And no one knows how such a case would go. The issues about discrimination that I spoke about, where the government of Trinidad and Tobago discriminated in favor of its own citizens against nationals of the Eastern Caribbean, the fact is that the Treaty of Chaguaramas has provisions that speak directly to such issues, as well as the issue of cross-border services, so that we have the opportunity to get a decision from the Caribbean Court of Justice that is fairly quick and fairly rapid, meaning that because you are dealing with an issue of trade, you are dealing with an issue of business, the CCJ is required to give judgment fairly quickly. And of course, some people may say, well, it's a big risk since once the CCJ makes a decision, you can't appeal. There's only one hearing. But the reality is that the CCJ's jurisdiction on the Treaty of Chaguaramas was intended to facilitate business and rapid decision making. You don't want matters to be dragging through the CCJ, through the court system without a decision. So it's a separate jurisdiction. The CCJ only deals with the rules under the Treaty of Chaguaramas, while of course in other matters, your normal civil and criminal matters, then you take the rule which is prescribed by your laws and by your constitution. So there is the prospect of a fairly early and quick decision. And here you have very well qualified judges on the CCJ, including individuals who in fact have been trained in public international law and have had considerable experience in interpreting such laws. And I don't think, for my part, there's really anything to fear about the quality of the judgment. And I've said I've had an opportunity to review the judgments emanating out of the CCJ, and I find them to be as good, as eloquent, and in some cases even far superior to what I see at the Privy Council.
Okay. You talked about how you expect a speedy resolution here. I have to ask, though, this has been ongoing for quite a while. Why has it taken so long to bring this particular matter?
Okay, I can tell you this involves an extraordinary amount of organization.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is that you are dealing with several jurisdictions, and the information had to be collected and collated. Very fortunately, the policyholders in Grenada proved to be very determined from the outset.
Mm-hmm.
So they established this entity called Backall, which of course is registered as a company, to advance their interests and to seek redress. Now it means that you have to identify each policyholder, you have to get details about their individual policies, and then of course you also have to do exactly the same thing in the other islands. And in some islands, people would not just be curious, but they may not be too enthusiastic about coming on board because they probably feel that, look, these matters are not going to go anywhere in any event,
mm-hmm.
and therefore they really don't want to waste their time in the part of it. Of course, that's an erroneous view. That's a wrong view. But what I'm just suggesting is that you also have to combat the cynicism that exists over this matter, because a lot of people feel that CLICO would get away in any event. But that's not the case. I mean, CLICO and the government of Trinidad and Tobago could be held accountable. So, I mean, that is the second important reason. The third is this. Backall needed to be sure that there was some hope under the treaty. It meant, therefore, that lawyers had to be engaged, look at the evidence, assess the evidence, and determine to what extent that there could have been redress under the Treaty of Chaguaramas. Now, to the credit of the group that was entrusted to handle this matter legally, they made sure that they left no stone unturned, meaning that they were meticulous, that the evidence was marshaled very well, it was collated very well, that they crossed their T's and dotted their I's. So it has taken some time for good reason, because collecting all the information has not been easy. Then, of course, too, we had to be careful because some of the issues of redress were being handled by the various judicial managers in the various islands, in the various countries of the Eastern Caribbean. And it is only recently, now that the judicial managers are coming to the close of the management of CLICO in their respective jurisdictions, that they have come on board and say, look, we support this action, we want to be part of this action, etc., and contribute to the process of ensuring that redress is provided to citizens who otherwise could not have got redress. So inevitably it had to take some time, but now that we are on our way, because we have in fact filed the application for leave, meaning to ask the CCJ to grant us a hearing in the matter, and I assume that we'll get a ruling fairly soon.
Okay. There may be some policy holders who may have been, like you said, skeptical, holdout, hesitant. Can policyholders still join in on
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. In fact, I can tell you that policyholders in St. Lucia are very late in accessing Backall and agreeing to becoming claimants, and there are a lot of reasons for that. And in each island, you have a case manager attending to individual policyholders. So a policyholder in St. Kitts Nevis can contact the case manager for St. Kitts Nevis. There is a website, Backall has a website that gives all the details.
Okay.
And they have attorneys, I think, in all the islands who represent their interests. So They can get some guidance from the attorneys, and I'm also the case manager for St. Lucia. So apart from being a lawyer on the team and assisting them with explaining, as I am doing with you this morning in your program, I also register potential register policyholders and able to extend advice to them in the process. So yes, the answer is yes. They can still come on board. It's an expanding list, and the more the better. Mm-hmm. And I certainly encourage all policyholders to do so to ensure the best protection that is available. There's really very little to lose, because if we don't pursue this action, this matter will just die and go nowhere. But at least by pursuing this action, there is scope, there is possibility, there's hope.
Okay. How much then, having said all that, how much then are you hoping to recover from the government there? Yeah, Trinidad.
Well, a lot will depend on the number of policies that have been identified across the region. By the time I think we are ready to actually commence arguments in the case for determination, we should have some idea of how many persons are involved. Because you're dealing basically with the loss of millions and millions of dollars. Huh? Let's not ever forget that, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier on, that Trinidad and Tobago had initially agreed to make $100 million US available to the Eastern Caribbean to deal with the fallout from BICO. They only paid $36 million and then refused to pay the balance of $64 million. So that alone gives you some idea of what sort of money you're talking about.
Right.
And when you are talking of these unique policies that I referred to, to you earlier on, and I'm talking about the executive flexible premium annuity policies, then you are talking of millions of dollars.
You going after any interest on that?
I cannot give you a quantifiable sum as of now, because the information is coming in. I want to assure you it's very, very significant.
Okay.
And it explains the deep hole that a lot of the policyholders found themselves in across the islands in the Eastern Caribbean.
So when can we expect, you have an estimate or some idea of when we should get a conclusion to this or decision to
Difficult to tell you, except to say that decision making is fairly quick. At the moment, there are two stages. First, we had to apply for leave to contest Trinidad and Tobago. Had to apply for leave under the treaty, because none of the governments, for understandable reasons, did not agree to espouse the claim. They preferred to leave the claim to the policyholders, which I think is a good thing. And they probably felt that there were very important diplomatic and political reasons why they would not want to espouse the claim on behalf of their citizens. So we have applied for leave. That is now before the CCJ, and I assume that we will be given that date fairly shortly to hear the application for leave. Now, that application for leave is essentially to get a response from the Caribbean Court of Justice whether there is a case to be answered, and they're granting the policyholders the leave so that they can argue the case before the CCJ. Once that is done, then the CCJ has to go through the motions of asking for arguments and legal submissions, and then a formal hearing. I would imagine that from the date of the leave being granted, that we should have a hearing in another 6 months. That seemed to me to be enough time for the case to be heard, from both sides. That's what I meant by fairly quick decision making.
Right.
And once, of course, the CCJ rules, then that's it. Now, a lot of people may say, well, it's a chance you are taking. That may be so, but we have presented the arguments to several lawyers, both in the region and externally. In fact, we have recruited two UK-based lawyers, Queen's Counsel, Simon Davenport from the UK, and Robert Strang, another attorney working with him. Out of Trinidad, of course, we have Rafael Ajuda, and a well-known lawyer, Mr. Gregory Pantin, and a filing attorney, Miguel Vasquez. So we have gone through the arguments systematically, and this has taken us the better part of 2 to 3 years, side by side with collecting the information that we require. and we are satisfied there is an arguable case, and the chances of success are looking good. But in these matters, you can never be totally prescriptive. You can never say you're going to win 100%. What you have to do is convince the court that you have a solid case and that judgment should be issued in your favor. So we are optimistic, but of course you can never ever be sure with judges 100%.
Got you. Dr. Anthony, before you go, I have just a couple more questions I want to throw at you. This financial fiasco, has had significant impact, both on the macro level and the micro level.
Sure.
Considering that, talk to me about that as you see it, and then talk to me about what type of oversight exists to protect Caribbean citizens in these types of situations going forward.
Okay. Yeah, that is really a crucial question, a very important question. I would say this. I served St. Lucia as a former Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. So I had the opportunity to witness firsthand the oversight of insurance companies, etc. In my personal view, the regulators across the region may not have been as thorough and as tight as they should have been. And there are a lot of explanations for this. The first is that we managed portfolios over the years in a very flexible way, and by and large we managed portfolios that were basically unsophisticated, except of course when it came to a company like Clico, because Clico was huge. You were not just dealing with an insurance company or conglomerate that had just one arm, meaning an insurance arm. Clico had investments in real estate. Clico had investments in manufacturing plants. Clico was huge. As you know, they were in ethanol in Trinidad and Tobago, and they were even involved in the distillery business. Now, I say all of this to suggest that, in a sense, the regulators throughout the Eastern Caribbean may have felt that they had a company that was solid, a company that had tremendous credibility, and a company that would have sustained any economic storm. Now, obviously, they were wrong, because the full story of Clico is not even known to policyholders in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's hardly likely that in the Eastern Caribbean, persons would have had issues or would have had problems. It is true, on the other hand, to say that some discerning individuals were beginning to get anxious about the policies issued by Clico, especially the very generous terms of the return on the investments. But to some extent, our regulators adopted a rather relaxed attitude, because they looked over their shoulder at how regulators in other parts of the Caribbean were handling the business of Clico. And I think we have all learned a very powerful and very important lesson. And what it does mean is that we have to put in place the proper regulatory regimes. And I think that is why the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, for example, particularly during the tenure of Dwight Venner, was anxious to enact new insurance legislation that gave better protection to those who purchase policies from insurance companies. So it's a very big issue, but I think we have all learned our lesson going forward, and I think people can take now some comfort from the new regimes that have been put into place to protect policyholders and purchasers of services from such companies.
Speaking of big matters, this in itself, this legal action in itself is certainly a huge undertaking, and I'm sure it's not cheap. How is this funded? How are you funding this?
Okay, the lawyers are not being paid. Now that is startling, isn't it?
Yeah.
The lawyers peace in this action, and as is often done in the case of U.S. practice, we are taking a leap of faith, and we would only be paid or compensated if we succeed. If we don't succeed, then of course the gamble did not work, so we would not be paid. So we have every interest, like the policyholders, to work hard to make sure that we succeed, that the claim is honored, and that Trinidad and Tobago compensates us. When that is done, then out of whatever damages that are provided or whatever the courts decide, we will then get a percentage out of that. But as of now, we are not being paid at all. We don't have a retainer, and like everybody else, it's a leap of faith.
I wish we would have more pro bono cases in this region.
I mean, lawyers in the Caribbean don't like the term pro bono. You notice I never mentioned it.
Yeah, okay.
In my response to you.
Right.
It's not a term we like at all. So,
I see that. I
didn't use the term pro bono, but I noticed you understood full well what I meant.
Dr. Anthony, thank you. Thank you very much for the update, and we'll be following that. We wish you much success on behalf of the people of the region. And
thank you very much for your kind comments, and of course support, and of course for making it possible to talk to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I wish you a great day and all the very best.
All right, same to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Goodbye.
And that was former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Dr. Kenny Anthony. He is now a part of the team, the legal team that has brought action against the government of Trinidad and Tobago, who have left out some of the region's policy holders in the compensation package. He's fighting that case to make sure that the rest of the people who were left out are fully compensated by BICO. All right, so there you have it. We will take a break, and when we come back, we'll open the lines, and feel free to comment on any of that. Sorry we couldn't have him to take any questions, but we could still talk about it. Let's go to a break and come right back.
It's only just a phase. Once we're vaccinated, and everybody gonna be safe. One kind, one people. We are roll up to roll up. Cause no man's alone. Do what's right. Cause I love you. And we're in this together. My sister, my brother. I don't wanna lose you. I love you too much. I think it's better for us, yeah. It's better for us, yeah. I don't wanna lose you. I love you too much, yeah. It's better for us than your mommy to let it roll out.
Bless up. Dejo here, and I'm doing my part in the fight against COVID-19 by following all safety protocols and, most importantly, rolling up my sleeve for the vaccine. So I'm encouraging you to do the same, because that's our best shot of protecting ourselves, our family, and our friends. So don't wait, vaccinate. Let's roll up to roll out.
Refresh and win $10,000 cash with Coca-Cola. Yes, you could be the lucky winner of $10,000 cash when you enjoy a 591 ml Coca-Cola Original Taste or 591 ml Sprite. Look under the special yellow cap to find your unique code. Promotion runs May 21st to August 13th. Terms and conditions apply. See press and in stores for details. Coca-Cola, open for better. Please follow all COVID-19 protocols when redeeming prizes.
Tune in for Policing with You, a half-hour radio program every Thursday morning at 9:15 on ZIZ Radio. Join host Inspector James Francis of the Criminal Investigations Department as he focuses on crime, factors contributing to criminal activity, crime prevention, and how the community can assist the police in reducing crime. It's Policing with You every Thursday morning at 9:15 on ZIZ Radio. Join us.
Welcome back to Frank and Candid on this Wednesday morning. We just had a conversation with former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Dr. Kenny Anthony, who is now one of the attorneys on the case against Trinidad and Tobago for compensation for former British American and CLECO customers. Members of the OECS were left out of the compensation package, or did not receive the full compensation, let me put it that way. And so he's taking the matter to the CCJ to try and get that money for the former customers. Let's go to the phone. Say good morning. Welcome to Frank and Candid.
Morning, Tony.
Good morning.
England, America ain't going to change the ways with Caribbean people. You understand? Only how we don't want to live, because we don't got no order and no law. You understand? The earth belongs to all, man. Whether black, green, or white, whatever color. We don't got boundary. And we got immigration. You understand? And we got free movement. And it seems to me like how we free movement here go mash up this country. Because everything that's here, some not reach up for 10 years ago, but everything that's here, everybody wants. Everything the government put said they're going to show, everybody's trying to get Spanish, Jamaican, all kind of people. I mean, I got nothing against people, no, but I mean, if we put in something, we could get something. But I went to the head center, of the Pasha, the 60 plus a day there for medication. I remember I went up there when the Labour government was in power. Couldn't find certain things. And it still happened. I don't know who they put in the order for them. I don't know who sabotage. And you're going to tell me sometimes I don't end up just to buy certain things. So you don't think them supposed to go and buy certain things down a drugstore. They must flag up the place where we got to share, everybody get. And then we don't have nothing. But it's going to be a problem, you know. We don't think it be a problem because me was in Tatola and immigration, I run my pan down a time. Me remember that. And then there was one Rasta man there for one time. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world, you know, and we got to put order in our place, you know, because we don't see how we come here around, you know. You understand? So we got to be very serious, you know. Everybody serious with the country, or we have to be serious with all we want to. And with that, me done.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the phone. Say good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Knight.
Good morning, sir.
In the conversation with Mr. Anthony out of Lucia, a few things stood out. One of the things that was agreed by the Trinidad and Tobago government was the $100 million US, and they fell short by probably they paid 30-something million.
34 million.
Yes. You was alluding to if there and then, from then to now, what if any interest would have gone on. I think that you alluded to that. And if the 50-something million that is remained, would that be suffice to pay out the rest of the shareholders and also pay the lawyers? Even though he says pro bono for now, some incentives would have been derived from to pay the lawyers once the case is successful. And that?
Well, yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, and so I wanted to, get that in perspective, that 50-something balance, $1 million.
Yeah, I do believe he never got to the answer to that, but I believe I saw that somewhere where they were actually seeking interest on it over the period.
Yeah.
Even though he never got to
carry them over, because it would be better that enough be dispensed to cover all of the shareholders and also the lawyers.
Right.
That would be prudent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I got that out of that. And,
Okay.
and you know, the way the CCJ goes about business because of certain individual jurisdiction and, you know, the doctrine not in row. So all of that would have to be fall in place because it is a case that needs to be dispensed and needs to be exhausted so that the shareholders regain their money. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, there's something though that I want to pick it back from
All right, quickly,
the
go ahead.
conversation with the mayor. I call him the mayor out of Harford Tree. He did allude to what was in the news about, you know, what global warming and the like. But he also alluded to something else about who should the blame, whose shoulders the blame should be laid on with, you know, this gymnastics, like the politics of who should be blamed for where the coronavirus originated.
You cannot load your caller, you get?
Hello?
Yes, there you go.
Yes,
Go ahead.
and so the blame game in terms of where the coronavirus originated, who should be blamed for that? Which one of the world's superpowers and the likes? Pushback, you know, the political gymnastics that we are accustomed to. But I want to say to my Christian brother, the mayor out of Herefordshire, just like anything else, we waited a long time because those things will be classified information. And we waited a long time. Right here in the Caribbean, when there were several attempts on Fidel Castro life, former president of Cuba life, and we waited a long time for information. So if we are going to continue to be gullible at the disposal of the international, the world players, and having to wait for information to say, oh yeah, you see, I told you guys it was China, or I told you it was the US. It will never happen, so. It will never happen, so. These things are play on humanity. We don't want to know where these things originate from. Humans supposed to be living loving enough not to be concocting these dangerous things on other humans, knowing the effects on humans, what these things will occur. For what gain? So all those blame games and waiting to see after 35 years classify information, all that is out of the window, my brother. Just live up. Because if you, as a Christian brother, say that Jesus is the Savior, I don't think in your mind nothing would come to save humanity.
Right.
Or else if Jesus outlived his life, his saviorness, then something new will come on the scene. But if in your world as a Christian, Jesus is your Savior, continue to believe that Jesus is your Savior, and not mankind, because we are dangerous. You said that the flood, God regret that he created man big and then he brought the flood. But this is the same God that put back man on the earth. And then man today come and be more dangerous than that.
Got some other callers. Let's go. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, let's go to the phones. Good morning. Welcome to Frank and Candid.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Knight.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I'm wondering, even at this late stage, if some accommodation could not be reached with Trinidad.
You mean a settlement?
Hello?
You mean a settlement?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because, well, obviously, it is clear that since they paid out the initial 37 million, or whatever it was, that they accepted some kind of liability.
Yes.
Right? And what I'm worried about is that if they lose the case in the CCJ, they might just say, well, I'll give you an IOU, and that's still the end of that.
Yeah.
You know, how do you make them pay out the rest?
It is risky.
Yes, you know, and the fact is, you know, they had an agreement. They had an agreement with the rest of the region. Okay, I think it would have involved the policyholders getting a haircut, recapitalizing BICO to at least save it. Okay, but the new incoming Trinidad government reneged on that agreement and decided to look after Trinidad policyholders only.
Right.
And you know, basically she said then, I think it was Mrs. Sarah, she said then Trinidad can't be the ATM for the region. Okay? So bearing that in mind, that there was an agreement, I'm wondering if the governments in the sub-region, if they should not just be sitting on the fence, looking on at what happened, if they should not become involved in it. I'm not sure whether as a plaintiff or respondent, okay? Because as was pointed out, it was lax regulation on their part that was responsible for the whole debacle in the first place. So there be some responsibility as well. Okay?
At the very least, though, caller. At the very least, okay, they had an agreement to pay out $100 million. They paid $34 million. At the very least, don't you think the court will see that the $60 million are left, 60+ million, whatever that is, that's left? They should pay the 66.
You would think so. You would think so, but obviously, the mere fact that the governments in the region don't really seem to want to become involved or to touch it suggests that there's more to this than just the legalities. Politics is involved, are involved as well.
As usual.
As usual, right? But it's a bad state of affairs because it left a bad taste in the mouths of and pockets of shareholders in the region.
True.
And I mean, because you know, we're made to feel that, well, we did something wrong because you invested in Dyco, right? You know, how could we expect to be getting these high interest rates? You know, it had to have been a Ponzi scheme, and you know, a lot of people, thousands of people in the region, right, were left holding the blade of the knife. Okay, and so I still think the onus is on the government to at least settle this in some way, right? And Trinidad as well. It's not just Trinidad. I don't think it's just Trinidad. The government should be held responsible as well to settle this in some way. I thought St. Lucia was in a different position to the rest of the other islands because I think they had the regulations in place. So I'm surprised that they have shareholders in, policyholders in St. Lucia.
What they're going after is the OECS region that was left out.
Yeah, I think they were not in the same position. Okay. But certainly, I think we're giving the governments a pass in the sub-region a pass by letting them just sit this out, not holding Trinidad, because before it reached the courts, the government should have held Trinidad responsible for living up to the agreement, and I honestly don't know how they got away with that.
Okay.
But anyway, let's see what happens.
We'll see. All right.
All right then.
Thank you. Back to the phones. Good morning. Welcome to Frank and Candid.
Greetings in the name of our great African ancestors, especially the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and Queen and Sing. God bless you, my beloved African, but how are you, the family?
All doing well. You?
I'm all right, beloved. Okay. I'm all right, you know, trying to cope.
All right.
Now, beloved, before getting to your topic, beloved, let me just stand solidarity with the freedom fighters of Antigua and Barbuda, beloved. And latest, yesterday, they kicked in the doors of the two young sisters, the two warriors queens, beloved brother. Early in the morning, kicked down their doors, handcuffed them, put shackles on their feet, and shackled them together like some mass murderers. You know, but on this thing, man, when you see people do things, the people look like them, beloved, and they are not murderers and everything. Even your murderer, you still have human rights, beloved. So my solidarity and brother Hammer Pump, man, the brother who they beat up, kick, beat up with AK-47s, beloved. Brother, we stay by your side, man. All of your sisters and brothers, we stand with you, beloved. And we ain't gonna let you down. I will do whatever I can from afar, beloved, because I stand with any African people, beloved, in their liberation, whether it's against a Negro oppressor or oppressors or any other oppressors, beloved, especially Negroes oppressors, because they're worse than any other people, beloved, when you oppress your own people. Now, brother, let me come to the talking about. You see, brother, this thing been going on for about what, over 10 years, right? Dr. Anthony was talking about. You want to tell me up to now, people can't get their monies, you know? And beloved, we got to done in this Mickey Mouse game, you know, man, and these Mickey Mouse institutions are we got to come up to modern times, because, brother, I don't know much about the banking system, right? In CARICOM, in the OACS, beloved. But I'm saying you're supposed to get some kind of insurance that in case the banks go under, they get your money there for at least, supposed to be at least 60% of your money, beloved. That you get back that, beloved. That's just Mickey Mouse thing you want to tell me. These administration throughout the Caribbean, they can't see that. And you got your money like in some insurance, and insurance, the same thing must be done. But I don't have the functions that thing if they upgrade or what, like I said.
They have.
They have?
Yes.
Okay, well that is good, and I hope from that year to year they revisit it every 2 years or what, and upgrade it to international standards. These backward and primitive ways, man, when it comes to all kind of things, beloved, you know, get it done past it. We got the capacity, we got the people, but we in this administration, 99.99 of them ain't have the will, beloved. We got the brains, but too much of political tribalism, my beloved brother, and that ain't gonna get us nowhere as African people now. And they don't even, this administration, most of them don't even say anything about it. Come on, man. Dr. Harris, because I think it's nearest, or a deep bear, my neighbor Stringberry, so me deal it with my neighbor Stringberry. Dr. Harris, you're a finance minister, and you got to say something, man, officially, beloved. You can't just stay there and say nothing, Brother Harris. No, man, you got to say something. It's mostly poor people money. Must say something. But I know someone else want to speak, so continue the great works. Pan-Africanism and praise. One love, my beloved.
All right, back to the phones. Good morning. Welcome to Frank and Candid.
Yeah, good morning, Brother Tony.
Good morning.
Yeah, Brother Tony, I tell you that the program no any longer, and you could have kept Dr. Kenny Anthony on the phone, that he could have answered some questions. Because my question will be between now Clico, right? Clico Geico. Is a private insurance or the government actually got it? Have shared it, so the government actually got it. Is a part of the government insurance. You know, you got private insurance. So I just would like to know if about the government actually got it. And then it branch out to other Caribbean countries. I know that you got national insurance, that's think it means insurance. Then you got Sagico, and you got Magico, and all those insurance come from different bodies. So I would like to know the Clico Geico insurance. And I want to know that they're still operating in the ACS?
I don't think so.
Geico, they still operating in the ACS?
No, I don't think so. No, Geico was actually owned by Clico, so.
Huh?
No, I don't think so. Go ahead.
They're not operating anymore. What about British American? British American was part of them too?
That is Geico. It's just...
That is right. Okay. Me know much about the insurance because you know that me doing really thing.
Okay.
I want to insure because I get a house under the farmer. I mean the PAM administration and the issue by national insurance or only so Apple insurance. So I never go register to my insurance to a company to a party or whatsoever. So I would just like to see the things go for the people, and because it's poor people money, ordinary people money, and most ordinary people have put the money into those business and in-house business. So I would like to see things work out for them. Okay, let somebody get a chance.
Okay. Back to the phones. Good morning. Welcome to Frank.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Nair.
Hey, good morning.
Let somebody get a chance. Yeah, do you have a stopwatch to keep an eye on the time that people spend on the phone? Because I find the cars this morning very locked. Anyhow, something that you forgot to ask, maybe you thought best not to, was who would be the case manager for St. Kitts Nevis in this Baiko Clico case?
Okay.
Because it would be good for some of us who have been suffered and lost money to be able to keep abreast with what the proceedings, how things are progressing, so that we can get back some of what we lost.
Well, for the sake of information, there's the BACOL or BACOL website, which has just click on your country.
Yeah.
And it will give you case managers for each country. But I accept that.
I see. What you say the name of the website is?
It's BACOL, BACOL or BACOL, .com or something like that. I'll give it to you in a few minutes. I'll get it by the time you get it off here.
I'll listen and hear what you say. Right, thank you, man.
Okay, no problem. All right, got a caller? Okay. All right, I'll get that site up for you. Let me go back to the phones. Good morning, welcome.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I call in to talk about the seaweed. What happened? They stopped cleaning the beaches?
No, they have not.
Because what happened nighttime, I cannot breathe properly because I'm asthmatic, and every night I have to be breathing that thing there, and it's making me feeling so sick. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
That's all I want to know.
All right, and let's hope that gets resolved. That website, www.bacol, that's BACOL.info. BACOL.info. And on that site, you can pick up a whole lot of information, and it leads you to each country, has the case managers and all of that listed there for each of the countries here involved. All right, so BACOL.info, and according to, I'm looking at the St. Kitts and Nevis case manager, it lists Lachlan Richards here, but and associates. But let's go back to the phone. Good morning, welcome.
Niall?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Talk Puppy.
Okay.
I want the authorities in St. Kitts to take the complaint by the last caller serious. And if the government want me help a little bit of money with the cleaning up, I will do it. The beaches don't look good, and it's not only the look of the beaches, it's the scent.
Yeah, okay.
And so that is why I say the government got to be careful. I back the government so I can criticize them. The government got to be careful that they're not putting square pegs in round hole. What am I talking about? There are too many people in this country working for the government, and they're just not doing their work. The beaches should be cleaned up from that stinking scent. You all have a good afternoon. I am not here to be overly critical of anyone. I am here for us to make what I refer to as meaningful changes. Please let us clean up the beaches, and if they want $1,000 or $2,000 to help them, I will pay it. Thank you, Nayas.
All right, thank you, and I think that'll do it for me today. Good way to end. Clean up the beaches, clean up the place. I'm Tony Nass. We'll be back tomorrow with much more right here on Frank and Candid. Have a great day.